So we are solving polynomial equations, and we're going to use the rational root theorem. So we're going to use the rational root theorem to list all the possible zeros for this function. And so here we want to find out, the rational root theorem says that we want to take all the coefficients of a sub o, which in this case a sub o is 15. So we want to take all those values and we want to divide them by all the possible factors of q. In this case, our lead coefficient is 1. So all the possible factors of 15, we have plus or minus 15, plus or minus 5, plus or minus 3, and plus or minus 1. And all the possible factors of 1 are just plus or minus 1. And so when we take p divided by q, basically all the possible answers for this, all the possible zeros that this could be, are plus or minus 15, plus or minus 5, plus or minus 3, and plus or minus 1. Those are basically just our p-values because there's only one possible factor for our q. We look at example 7. Again, we want to find our p divided by q. So that's what we eventually want to find, is p divided by q. And our p-value is, or our a sub o is -6. So all the possible factors of -6 are plus or minus 6, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 2, and plus or minus 1. And all the possible factors for q, or a sub n comes from right there. A sub n is 2. So our possible factors are plus or minus 2 and plus or minus 1. So for this one, we have two different factors for our denominator. So we actually have to do our example here twice. So plus or minus 6 divided by 2, plus or minus 3 divided by 2, plus or minus 2 divided by 2, and plus or minus 1 divided by 2. And then we can remember that we don't want to repeat values. So plus or minus 2, that is actually equal to plus or minus 3. And plus or minus 2, that is equal to plus or minus 1. So, and then also when we divide these by the other value, which is 1, it's just those values. So we can start writing those down. So our solution ends up being, and I'm just going to write it down here so that we don't cross paths. Plus or minus 6, that came from right there. Plus or minus 3 comes from both. And then our next one is plus or minus 2. That came from right there. Then we have plus or minus 3/2. That came from right there. Plus or minus 1. That came from right there and right there. And plus or minus 1/2.